This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. The beds are being made, the vacuum cleaners are out, the silverware is being shined once more. London's hotels are getting ready to open, some sooner than you might think. But will a stay in a 5-star ever be the same again? Or a 2-star for that matter? And will any of us be able to afford either of them? Our consumer business editor Jonathan Prynn has been talking to hoteliers and he joins me now. Jonathan, is anyone actually expecting to reopen anytime soon?
They don't have a clear idea yet. They're not expected to be in the first wave of businesses reopening that's likely to be flagged up by the Prime Minister on Sunday. However, the ones I've been speaking to are provisionally penciling in July. But I think realistically, it's going to be towards the end of the summer before we see hotels opening up in large numbers.
And what's it going to be like when you go back into a hotel? When you carry your luggage in, are people still going to be taking that? Are you going to be going up to the reception? What's going to change?
First up, the doorman isn't likely to be there, so there'll be no one to open the door for you or take your luggage on arrival. Reception may or may not be there. In some cases, some hotels I've been speaking to have been saying that they would prefer everyone to check in advance and go straight to their rooms, and there'll be no keys either, by the way, because your phone will become your key. You'll download an app. If you're below the third floor, you're probably going to have to walk to keep the lifts for people on the higher floors. And they'll only be able to go up on their own or with their partner. So some hotels, however, said they will keep a reception area, but there'll be a big holding bay so that you don't get the sort of usual queue and crush check-in that you get sometimes at busy times. Other hotels have said you might have to book yourself in to check in, as it were. So you get a slot, say at 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever. So you're there on your own when you check in, not with crowds of other people. Yeah, it's all going to be a bit strange, I'm afraid.
And I'd imagine the restaurants, well, some hotels have very famous restaurants, but we know separately that industry is considering a whole bunch of changes. I'm guessing hotels will have to do the same things as well with the social distancing and fewer tables and difficulty even getting food to tables. Is there going to be a lot of room service in hotels?
I think room service will become much more part of the sort of core offering, as it were, when it comes to food. First thing that will go is those breakfast buffets that are familiar to all of us when we go and stay in hotels, and people sort of wandering around, making their toast, picking up a croissant, fruit salad, all that sort of thing. That's all going to go. That's just too risky, too crowded. You can't enforce social distancing, too much touching of things. So breakfast will either be room service only, or you'll sit down at a socially distant table and order your breakfast to your table, like in the old days, I guess. I think some hotels will try to keep their restaurants open, particularly if they've got plenty of space. They've got spacious dining rooms, they can spread the tables out a bit. But I think you're right, room service will increasingly play a central role. And what will happen is the waiter will bring the trolley up to your room, knock on the door, withdraw a few paces to a safe distance, then it'll be up to you to bring the trolley in, and then when you finish your food, you'll put the trolley back outside in the corridor, go back into your room, and the waiter will come and wheel it away. It's going to be a bit of a dance, I think.
But here's the thing, Jonathan. I'm looking at the figures from the Bank of England's forecasts, and they're pretty gloomy again. Is anyone going to be able to afford to go to a hotel?
Well, that's a really good question. There won't be as much international travellers coming into London. A lot of people, you're right, unemployment is going to soar. I think the Bank of England is pointing towards that today, maybe 9% unemployment by the middle of the year or the autumn. And a lot of people will feel very fearful about their jobs and their financial security. That said, I think people that are well off, have savings, or feel relatively secure about their employment, there is an appetite. And what the hotels are saying to me is that the bookings going into the summer and beyond are surprisingly robust, given everything that's going on. And they just think there is an absolutely huge appetite for people who, that will all have been tucked up inside. There is an absolute raging demand for people to get out and have what fun can be had in these strange times. And that includes going to posh hotels, albeit under very odd and unusual circumstances.
I have to admit, I have been looking myself at a few websites, possibly just a flight of fancy just now, but just having a look at some hotels and thinking what might happen in the future. What about longer term? How's the economy going to hold up further down in the post-lockdown era?
Well, I mean, interestingly, the Bank of England was surprisingly optimistic and upbeat about this today. They very much see a classic V-shaped recession with a very, very sharp downside, but an almost equally precipitous or steep upside once we get beyond lockdown and the other very, very restricting measures that are in place now. So they see the economy falling by 30% in the first half of the year, which is just staggering, and 14% over the year as a whole, but then bouncing back amazingly rapidly. And they say there'll be growth of 15% next year, which sort of more or less takes us back to square one, with more growth coming in 2022. So I think it's if they're right, and they do caveat all these projections hugely, saying it totally depends on how quickly the social distancing and all the other measures are lifted. But if they're right, and who's to say they're not, it could be the absolute sort of epitome of short, sharp shot. Very nasty first half of the year, getting better into the autumn, and then soaring away with a really strong recovery into the new year of 2021.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.